1:30. I'd like to call the meeting of the Traffic and Transportation Commission for September 16, 2019 to order. Roll call, Commissioner Varnell.
Present.
Commissioner Littlefield.
Present.
Commissioner Russell.
Present.
Commissioner Hale is not available. Commissioner Schuline.
Here.
Commissioner Miller.
Here.
Commissioner George is not available. And Commissioner Milner.
Here.
Thank you very much. Can I have a motion concerning the minutes of the August 19, 2019 meeting, please?
Motion to approve.
We have a motion from Commissioner Schuline. Do we have a second?
Second.
From
Varnell.
Thank you very much. So we have a motion from Commissioner Schuline to approve the minutes from August 19th, seconded by Commissioner Varnell. Do we have any talk about it? Okay. Can I have your votes, please? Okay. Item is approved. The report on licensed taxi and record services will be next month. Do we have anybody here to speak on item 4, the consent docket, against one of the two items on the consent docket? Okay. Staff, do you have any input?
No, we're recommending approval on both items.
Okay. Thank you. Do we have a motion concerning the consent docket?
So moved.
We have a motion to approve the consent docket by Commissioner Miller. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Russell. Any discussion? Okay, motion to approve the consent docket by Commissioner Miller, seconded by Commissioner Russell. Votes, please. Okay, item is approved. We go on now to item 5, individual consideration. 5A. Todd Butler, PE, PTOE, President, Traffic Engineering Consultants, Inc., to consider request for a traffic signal at South MacArthur Boulevard and Southwest 8th Street. Hello, sir. Can I have your name, address? You have up to 5 minutes.
Yes, my name's Todd Butler. I'm with Traffic Engineering Consultants, 6000 Southwestern, Suite 300, Oklahoma City. Here to discuss the item regarding a traffic signal request. A traffic study was conducted for a proposed future commercial development to be located on the south side of I-40 between MacArthur and Rockwell. Back in 2013, we completed the original traffic study for the project. At that time, it was considered that a traffic signal at Southwest 8th Street and MacArthur would be necessary to accommodate the future traffic for that particular development. In discussing that with the city, it was determined that the previous study was old and needed to be updated, and so we were requested to update that based on newer trip generation rates for commercial developments. And that was accomplished and submitted to the city just this year. And in doing so, it still confirmed that a traffic signal would be best to accommodate the future traffic for that particular development at that location. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have regarding the study or the development. Also noted in the traffic study was the Southwest 8th Street is an Oklahoma City bond project. And I think it was always determined that the traffic control at the intersection of MacArthur would be accommodated through that bond project as well. So that's why what initiated the request for the traffic studies, because the bond project design is currently underway.
All right. Thank you very much. Does anybody else have any that want to speak on this item?
Yes. Todd, I noticed there's a substantial increase in the proposed traffic. Is that the numbers that you came up with? Is that
for the development?
Yes.
It was actually a reduction somewhat from what was originally proposed in the 2013 traffic study. Due to a change in trip rate information for different types of developments, there's actually a slight reduction in the anticipated trips to be projected by the development.
Can you tell me if the traffic signal was installed in this year, and Of course, it didn't meet warrants when it first, but how soon
Right.
do you think it would meet warrants based on your...
Well, that's going to be dependent upon how soon development can occur. Of course, it won't occur until the street's extended and widened. And,
That's in the contract,
you know,
right?
that's part of the bond project, yes. And as with any commercial development, it'll take the street and good access to generate developers to come in and want to build. So it's really dependent upon what we do for the infrastructure as to how soon it would develop.
What kind of time frame are you looking at for development to begin there, and where are you in that process?
As the engineer for this particular study, I'm not privy to the actual development concerns. I do have a representative of the developer here that might be able to answer some of those questions.
Sir, if I could have your name, address, please?
Yes, sir. My name is Terry Haynes. I signed up there.
Yep.
My address, I'm with SMC Consulting Engineers, 815 West Main, Oklahoma City. I'm here on behalf of the developer who's in partnership with the city and prior discussions with the bond project that's coming up. So as far as the timeline is concerned, of course, we're waiting for the bond funds to come through, which we hope within the next year or so. We're setting the table for the infrastructure, including the roadway improvements of 8th Street, which is part of that bond project, and then the signal with that as well. As soon as the street is finished, I know the developer in concert with the city is working on the development along the south side of I-40. It's more or less an extension of Westgate Marketplace, which is on the north side of I-40, and you've seen how successful that's been. And so Zerbe Interest is the partner on this, and looking to develop that track between MacArthur to Rockwell.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Does somebody else want to speak? We have another, no, we don't. Anybody else want to speak on item 5A? All right, thank you very much. Okay, staff?
All right. Well, you've got our comments before you. The issue that you've got presented is a request for a traffic signal that would be done. It's being requested to be done in conjunction with an extension of Southwest 8th Street. Based on existing traffic counts, we as staff don't have cause to recommend the installation of a traffic signal at this time based on current conditions. This particular traffic signal would be in relative close proximity to about 5 others north of it, running from that would include ones at Southwest 5th Street, the 2 at I-40, Southwest 3rd, and then at Reno Avenue. At this point in time, since it's in close proximity to the others, what we would recommend is that the particular signal should not be installed until an engineering study indicates that installing it would improve the overall safety and operation of this particular intersection. So at this point in time, action on the item will be at the discretion of the Commission. I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have on it.
All right, do we have a motion concerning item 5A? No, sure.
Based on what's currently before us, I make a motion to disapprove.
Okay, we have a motion to disapprove item 5A from Commissioner Russell. Do we have a second?
If I may.
Just a second, sir.
Yes, sir.
So we have a motion to disapprove from Commissioner Russell. Do we have a second on this motion?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Milner. Okay, anybody up here, just a second, anybody up here want to talk?
I have a question. You said that this proposed development is across I-40 from an existing development, correct?
Yes, sir.
That you folks developed?
Yes, sir, we did.
I've just lost my page. On the aerial on page 10, I see a traffic system that meanders through that and winds up at MacArthur on the south side of I-40. Is there a traffic signal there?
You're talking about the existing...
on the existing development across I-40?
On the south side there. No, there's not a signal there.
There's no...
There's one at Southwest 5th Street, And then this signal is proposed to be approximately 700 feet south at Southwest 8th Street at MacArthur.
Yeah, Commissioner Littlefield, if you go to page 11 in your agenda, you'll be able to see the traffic signals that are on MacArthur Boulevard.
I see it, there you go.
And the development, the first phase of Westgate Marketplace is on the south side of Reno Avenue, and it basically runs between MacArthur and Rockwell. So you can see that there's signal, well, the signal of Reno and MacArthur is already there. There's one for this that was, I guess, presumed that supports the development, that original Westgate Marketplace. That's at Southwest 3rd and MacArthur.
I see it. Thank you.
Okay, anybody else up here? Sir?
Yeah. And looking at your plans, I think it's real exciting that you're going to be developing down there and everything, and
Yes.
really invite you to come back as that develops out, and I think we could more than likely accommodate what needs might happen at that time.
Well, I was going to suggest, if we could, before you make the vote, for a continuance. So I'd like to set aside your original motion so that it would give us more time to work with staff, because this is an important aspect of bringing those developers, those builders, to bring the tax dollars in. But we need an infrastructure first, which includes a signal. And I heard what Mr. Chai said as far as more study to be done. We want to be sure we've completed the study on everyone's behalf. We want to be sure it's a safe intersection. So before you make your vote, I would ask that we continue to give us a little bit more time to work with staff on this.
Well, let me just ask, funding for the signal, would you expect it to come from the bond
Yes, sir.
piece of it?
That's correct.
Okay.
And just if I may, by putting in the signal now, whether it's actually turned on is another matter, but that could be contemplated or discussed as well. But obviously at today's dollars it would be much cheaper than waiting for everything to build out when all of a sudden now we have a traffic jam there. And we really need the signal. And now we're looking at other funding revenues other revenues for funding that signal in the future. And that's what we're looking at here.
So let me ask, at the location where you want the signal light, is that intersection part of the 8th Street bond?
Yes, sir.
So is there going to be work done on the intersection?
Yes, sir. There is.
So you're saying you would all the work being done at that intersection to go ahead and run all the wire in and everything
That's
you
correct.
need?
That's correct. As part of the review by staff, and we have plans turned in now, we're at 60% as far as the 8th Street improvement plans are concerned, but one of the comments from staff, when we've adopted it, is to add another lane on 8th Street, an outbound lane on 8th Street at MacArthur. So yes, we'll be making hard improvements to the existing street that's there, adding sidewalks. Now would be the time to be able to put in the conduits, the wiring, everything else that would go with the signal set.
Okay.
That could be done without putting the signal poles up, though.
Sir?
All the conduit could be run, and all the substructure could be done as part of the 8th Street
It could be.
project without installing the signals, and they could come back and do those.
We just
Later,
we're hopeful that the money would still be set aside from the bond to help pay for those poles and mast arms and that sort of thing.
Well, and of course, just to do all the conduit work, if there's no signal authorized, then the city wouldn't go ahead and pay for that conduit work and all the support part of it, is what you're saying also, right?
Yes, that's all part and parcel of
Right.
infrastructure work. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Is this development a result of a PUD, or is it just straight C3 zoning and underway?
I think it's straight C3 zoning through there. I don't believe that we have a PUD zoning case along this stretch.
Who ordered the traffic study, or was it just voluntarily done?
Well, this was done prior to the city's adoption of the policy or ordinance now of the traffic impact fees, which is then a warrant analysis of existing conditions or conditions as they are today. So the study was done at that time was somewhat typical for developments throughout Oklahoma City, and that the developers would volunteer to provide the study as a warrant analysis, and it could include future, and it did include future signals for, say, a development that's coming right out of the ground that we knew was going to generate a lot of traffic. Yes, sir.
Yeah, and Commissioner Littlefield, to answer your question, we've got up on your screen right now the zoning for this particular tract of land was approved under PUD number 1372, and it was in September of 2008.
Thank you.
And the original traffic studies done for that were calling for traffic improvements such as, adding a traffic signal on 8th Street at MacArthur in support of that particular addition.
So would the Planning Commission had made a request for the traffic study?
It was part of our ordinary procedures for large developments at that time, yes. But the commission itself did not request it. There would have been a staff requested item.
Thank you, Mr. Chai.
Well, and now to go back to what you're offering is to push it off for some time, this item. But I think what we're saying is based on the current study and the current traffic throughput, it doesn't meet any warrants. And I think what was mentioned is until it meets warrants, then you could come back and say, yes, we want to go ahead and put in a actual signal light, and then we would probably feel comfortable spending city money on an item that meets warrants. And I think where we're struggling, and I'm just kind of summarizing, I believe, is we're not comfortable spending city money on something that may not occur. So as a good steward, I think we're trying to say there's no warrant, plus the impact on the drivers going through that area of a non-warranted signal. So we're worrying about the whole city aspect here and the funds. So I think that's, am I right with that kind of feeling there, gentlemen? So that's why waiting another month or two to update the study. It's looking at current numbers, I think, is what our concern is. Right. And from the motion and everything, I think we're not comfortable saying what the future could possibly hold.
And I don't pretend to understand how the bonding mechanisms are in place and whether you could hold that money back for another 5 years after 8th Street is completed. But I think that's what you're asking us to do, is to hold that funding mechanism.
Well, I would think that by saying no to the signal light right now is we're saying to the bond people, don't fund a signal light because there's not one that's warranted.
Right.
And then I would defer to staff and council. Is this a valid concern of the Traffic Commission, or can we say, because of the projection of the future, it would be okay to go ahead and say, let's put money towards something that's not warranted? To staff and council, either one, or are we where we need to be?
Well, as far as funding for future projects go, the 2017 bond allows for funding for the description for the extension of Southwest 8th Street. It notes that it may include things like traffic signals and other improvements that would be related to the extension of 8th Street. There will always be monies that are potentially surplus from other bond projects. So if it becomes necessary in the future, that should this development occur and the traffic volumes warrant the use of a traffic signal, there's always mechanisms to fund a project like that if the intent is to come back and have the city fund it. So it's not like this would be the last time you could ever potentially look at this intersection.
When is this bond money supposed to be spent on Southwest 8th Street? Because I just need to be clear. We're just talking about a signalized intersection, right? We're not talking about whatever bond money is being spent to update that section of street, correct?
No, the way the bond project is written for Southwest 8th Street is to extend it from where it currently ends a few hundred feet to the west of 8th Street, and then continue to build it at just about to a half mile west of MacArthur, basically in line with the street called North Peniel.
Right, but that is already scheduled to happen. That is going to happen.
That is the funded project, is the extension of 8th Street. Okay. And the signal would just be a potential addition to it.
Okay.
Well,
but
the primary project
has nothing to do with that street being updated.
Correct.
It's going to happen.
That's correct.
Is it on the calendar to happen?
That I can't answer for you. I know that it's in the, I know
It's
that.
earmarked already for that
Yes.
to have happen.
Yes, it is, that
Okay.
extension of 8th Street is in fact a funded bond project.
And then
yes.
once this development gets underway, what is the timeline to develop? This is a lot of land.
It
I
is.
mean, this is a multi-year project, right?
It is.
So it just seems like what we are saying is this could be 15 years down the road to get it fully developed out, correct?
Well, yeah, perhaps 100% yes, but we expect that it'll pick up momentum the moment that 8th Street is built.
Yeah.
And that's, again, why, and we always, I suppose, thought that the signal being a part of the bond project, because I know the language says may, but it was submitted as part of the bond project request, if you will, as in partnership with the city. So I guess it's just, it's a matter of how soon can we get the signal in. If we're too late, we may be turning, there may be developers out there, land developers out there that don't want to come in because they can't get their customers in and out. And that's our concern, is to make sure that we have the signal in place. And even
Well,
at that time, it may not be 100%
But for
warranted.
right now, though, if I'm looking at this right, though, Southwest 5th Street, you're going to connect to that, and there is a signal there, right?
There is a signal.
So you could service some of the development in the beginning, on what's going on Southwest 5th Street, and then as you get down the road and all the blocks come into place, then I think what we're saying is we can look at it at a later date when it meets the warrants and look at that intersection at Southwest 8th. But right now, they do have a way to get in and out signalized. What business, is that at home? Is that what's right there?
There's an at-home
Yeah.
and then Florida Core
Yeah.
directly west.
Okay, thanks for answering my questions.
Okay. Sir? Yep.
I might just add one other item. ODOT's currently working on a corridor study within this area, and these interchanges are subject to change based on that study. We don't know exactly what they're going to do yet, but with those changes, that signal at 5th Street may go away as a full access intersection as part of those improvements.
Okay, so what is that? So May, I'm not following. Can somebody explain? ODOT might come along, and are you saying ODOT may come along and take away that signalized intersection at Southwest 5th?
As a full access intersection, it's possible, yes.
Okay.
Todd, do you have any sense as to where the ODOT may be in the planning process?
They're going back and reviewing additional interchange designs right now, particularly at MacArthur and Meridian. They were going to consider frontage roads at one time. I don't think those are still in play. But with the changes that at least I've seen as alternatives, I could see that 5th Street being a full access intersection going away, which would make 8th Street the primary entrance to this development.
Would it likewise have an effect at Southwest 3rd Street, you suppose?
Yeah.
So let me just ask council and staff, could a motion be made to say it would be approved? Would a caveat or a sub-point that says not turned on until it meets the warrants? Can we do that kind of?
You might.
Sir.
We don't know what's going to happen. They may have to change some modification to add lanes. We need to wait and see what ODOT's going to do. And if they're going to take away a signal, they're going to make accommodations for that traffic somewhere else. I mean, they're not just going to shut one off and say, hey, go do something else. I'm pretty sure. We didn't while I was there anyway. So.
And that's what 8th Street would do, I think. That would help accommodate that.
Yeah, that would. But then they may get on board and do something there.
A lot of corridor-related planning projects that ODOT has, it's all dependent on funding. And if they're planning on, I don't know, maybe like a single-point urban interchange or something like this, that's a
possible alternative.
Yeah, those are very expensive projects, so that would be years on down the road.
Yeah. And I only mention that because we were talking about future, 10, 15 years down the road regarding that signal being warranted. So it could be sooner if something happens there. It could be sooner if development occurs. Of course, the street You know, there's nothing serving the new street right now either, and that is a bond project. So without the street, the development won't occur, and then with better access, the development would occur sooner, in my experience.
Okay, so just to kind of clarify, coming back to my question, can we say yes to a signal light but not be able to be turned on until it meets warrants or it comes back to us in the future? Because here's what I'm thinking. We're not the holder of the money. We don't spend the money. That's going to go to somebody with the bond people at the city that says, yes, it can be spent. And if we say to them, yes, a signal light can go in there and it doesn't meet warrants, but it's not going to be able to be turned on and functional until they come back and prove that it can be operational, should be operational, the spending of that money to install is up to somebody else in the city. And if they say, no, we as the holders of the purse aren't going to go ahead and spend that, well, then they don't. And if they say, yes, we can see how that helps the city and it helps growth in the area, and of course we all want growth, and it helps all that, and they're willing to go ahead and pay that $100,000, $200,000, whatever it costs for those lights, well, then that's their call. I think we just need to look at it on our end and maybe do what we can to help, but yet not commit totally to affecting the other 400,000 people that are in the city.
The only thing that makes me nervous about that is if we do go ahead and install it and just not turn it on, what if it never meets the warrants? And we've triggered it that way, and it just sits there, and then as a taxpayer saying, well, we just installed a light that's doing nothing.
Well, then we can take it down and put it somewhere else. Then the city can take it down and use those, the only thing that we would be out is the conduit work and the pylons to just put it on, basically. Am I right, kind of? So all the light signaling and the box support and the sensors and all that could go somewhere else, could be re-put out 10 years from now if for some reason, and we hope not, of course, things don't work out there. So that's, if council and the staff is okay with that kind of modification to a motion.
Well, I'll throw out one other thing that you might you could potentially consider, and because since its signal isn't warranted today to support the development, I don't see why there wouldn't be a reason why the Commission couldn't consider approval of something like this subject to the developer funding its construction at some point in time when it's needed. Because at that point in time, it could be approved, and if it ever becomes warranted to the point where the developer sees that it's needed to support all the the new activity that's gone in on the west side of MacArthur, they'll have the approval to go ahead and turn in plans for the construction of the signal. And at that point in time, it could wait. It could wait until needed, or go in sooner, or potentially never, depending on what the needs of development are for that area.
Well, and I think one of the concerns of the applicant is that by having the signal approved and then having the visualization on the road when the possible people come in to build in there, come look, it's going to help them to move into the area knowing that they have the exit point. And I think that's one of your key points of reason why you're here now.
Exactly, yeah.
If we vote to approve, I know we don't control the money, but is that coming out, is it going to be understood that that's coming out of the bond money that's going into the work on Southwest?
I think the way the bond is already written, traffic signalization can or may be included in the bond project. So it's not really a separate item necessarily.
Right. If the decision is up to keep the purse strings of the bond, then I don't know if we have any control over this. Then if we do vote to approve it and they run short, can they reach out to the developer and say, we can do this, but we're short, and if you want to kick in, we'll get it done? I mean, is that getting closer on getting to get it done?
Usually there's access to other funds, because various projects funded under the bond, some of them will overrun their budget and some of them will underrun. And the ones that underrun are typically used for like to help meet the overruns on other projects. In this particular case, but I understand where you're coming from, but if a traffic signal was approved as part of the bond project, it would be built and it would be turned on. I don't think that there would be much public sympathy for building a traffic signal, especially since there are some existing users already on 8th Street but never turning it on.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
The
I
public
totally
expectation
understand
would be that once built, it would
If
be
the traffic
used.
signal goes up, the signal, it needs to be operational. I'm just making sure, because I don't think we've oftentimes had one that's come up where a bond's being done on a street, and I'm just trying to understand if we're going to suggest it, if we vote to approve it, if it's in stone, well, it's a part of that whole bond package now that's getting done. And if they have overruns on doing the street, and this was extra, and you're saying that there's other money in there, where's that money coming from the city? Is that...
Well, that'll come from the other bond issues that don't use all their money.
Okay.
So, there's 100 bond
Right.
issues. So, okay, just to summarize where we're at, we have a motion to disapprove item 5A. We have the applicant wishing to delay a vote on this and move it to a later time so they could relook at the numbers and relook at the study, because that was asked. And then there are some other options that we all talked about all the way across. So would you have any final comments before we press on?
No, at this time I don't, other than I think when the bond was originally put together for this particular project, it was assumed that signalization would be included with that, and that's why it was written and included in the budget for that particular bond project as well.
Okay, all right, thank you very much. So before we press on, I'm going to go to the motioner, to Commissioner Russell. Does your motion stand? Or would you like to modify your motion?
Well, wait, before you make that.
Okay, you have some other comment?
I don't know that it's our consideration where any money's come from. We're here to decide if it's warranted or not, if it's really needed for the community. I mean, the funding will take care of itself when it gets warranted, I'll tell you that for sure. That's our big decision, is not trying to figure out. I know how these things get funded, and yeah, it might have been included in the bond issue, but that, for us as a traffic commission, should be concerned on whether these traffic control devices are warranted or not, is our main concern. The funding will come. Once we do approve one, it's going to get installed. It may be city funds or whatever the city does, however they set up the funding. But I think, from my perspective, we need to look at them on whether they're warranted or not.
And sir, just to comment on that, warranted now or warranted in the possible future?
Now.
Okay. All right. Here we go. All right, we have another one.
I'm sorry to keep this going. I'm uncomfortable making a decision, yes or no, on this as it's written today. I think it's important that these folks have a little time and go back and find out what exactly that bond would do for a traffic light at that intersection.
Well, I think they've already just said it, that it was part of the budget.
If it's part of the budget, then, and it's in a bond, is it necessary for this body to approve that light?
It's a new traffic control device, so yes, it is.
So yes, it is.
Yes, under 30.
Okay.
Yes.
Thanks.
Okay, any other commissioners?
Did we get, you had asked if it would be, if we approved contingent upon the Muncie standards being met. Did we get an answer of whether that would be something we could do?
Well, it is something we could do, except I think the staff, if we just make sure I'm right, said if we approve a light and it gets built, it'll be turned on. I think that we can't really say we approve a light but don't turn it on. Either we're going to have one there or we're not going to have one there. And that's our call, is do we have one there now or do we wait until it's time and then we have one? And I think that's the final choice that has to be made. So your motion, do you stand?
The motion stands.
Motion stands. Second? Still second. Okay, we have a motion from Commissioner Russell to disapprove item 5A, seconded by Commissioner Milner. Can I have your votes, please? Okay, item is disapproved. Okay, we go on now to item 5B, Richard Riley and the traffic management. To consider request to 1, change the speed limit on South Bryant Avenue between the Southern Interstate Highway 240, I-240 Service Road, and Southeast 89th Street from 40 miles per hour to 50 miles per hour, or subpoint 2, change the speed limit on South Bryant Avenue between Southeast 44th Street and Southeast 104th Street from 40 miles per hour to 45 miles per hour. Anybody here? Hi, sir. Can I have your name, address? You have up to 5 minutes.
My name is Richard Riley. I live at 2901 Southeast 96th Street, Oklahoma City. First of all, I want to say thank you to everybody for allowing me this opportunity. I don't have an exact date, but prior to construction, the area was single lane in each direction. There were no curbs. It was dirt side road with drainage ditches for the entire length. It is now currently double lane in each direction with curbs. The interesting thing that I have found out through engineering is that there were several matrix studies that you folks do pertaining to the curbs, and there's a lot of technical data that I'll receive. I'll let you decipher that, but like I proposed, from I-240 Service Road, South Bryant, going south to Southeast 89th, it was, prior to the construction, it was 50 miles an hour. It is currently at 40 miles an hour. My request is to bring it back up to the 50 miles an hour. Of course, all that was with not knowing the knowledge of the matrix. But anyway, as I showed in my letter through the public access, none of the zoning had been changed prior to or during or after the construction. And that was pretty much what I was basing everything off of. Since zoning hadn't changed, why should the speed limit change was kind of my question where I came up with all this. So I presented everything I could. There was lots of studies done, I appreciate that, and basically the decision's yours.
All right, sir. In reference to subpoint 2 that's on the agenda, do you have any input on that?
Well, like I said, the matrix that I saw referred to the curbing. Prior to, there was no curbing. Now there is curbing, and according to the matrix, whoever did the study years ago, the curbing does not allow anything more than 45 miles an hour, I believe, which I'm good with that. I mean, that's beyond my technical expertise.
Right, that's just what I wanted to hear, if you're okay with subpoint 2.
Yes, sir.
Over subpoint 1.
Yes, sir.
Okay, very good. Do you have anything else?
No, sir.
Okay, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Anybody else wanted to speak on item 5B? Okay, staff.
All right, you've got a comments before you. As you noticed, Mr. Riley had sent us a request to look at restoring the speed limit to 50 miles an hour on the mile of Bryant south of I-240. When we went out there to conduct an initial study, we looked at the adjacent miles along South Bryant Avenue, and we conducted additional speed studies. And when we did that, we went all the way to Southeast 44th Street, where Oklahoma City runs into the southern corporate limits of Del City, and we took it as far south as Southeast 104th Street, where at which point in time Bryant Avenue south of 104th Street is entirely within the city of Moore. Our speed studies found out that the prevailing speed, or the 85th percentile speed, along this entire stretch, except for that 1 mile that's between 89th Street and I-240, basically runs at about 46 miles an hour. So what we are proposing as an alternative to Mr. Riley's request is to convert the entire corridor where it passes through Oklahoma City and move the speed limit up to the point where it meets the current prevailing speeds, which is the best we can do would be 45 miles an hour. As noted, Mr. Riley talked about our comments in the staff report about why we could not use a 50-mile-an-hour limit on that mile of 89 of Bryant between 89th and I-240. And it's because the policy on geometric design for streets and highways, which is put out by an organization called AASHTO, talks about the appropriate use of curbs on high-speed roadways and low-speed roadways. And in this particular case, AASHTO does not recommend using a curb section on a roadway that has a speed limit higher than 45 miles an hour, which is why, after we studied this, we've come back as an alternate recommendation for the Commission to consider changing the speed limit of Bryant basically from 40 to 45 miles an hour, where it runs through Oklahoma City between Del City and Moore. If you've got any questions on this item, I'd be happy to answer them.
All right, do we have a motion concerning item 5B?
I'd like to make a motion to approve item 5B, subset 2.
Okay, we have a motion from Commissioner Russell to approve item 5B, subset 2. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Littlefield. Any discussion? Okay, we have a motion to approve item 5B, subpoint 2 from Commissioner Russell, seconded by Commissioner Littlefield. Can I have your votes, please? Okay, item is approved. Okay, we go on now to item 5C. John Kunkel, founder and managing principal method architect, to consider request to 1, establish 90-degree angle parking within a setback parking area on the north side of Northwest 12th Street from approximately 180 feet east to 385 feet east of the east curb line of North Broadway Avenue, and 2, establish 2 reserved parking spaces for the physically disabled on the north side of Northwest 12th Street from approximately 330 feet east to 356 feet east of the east curb line of North Broadway Avenue. Hi, sir. Can I have your name, address? You have up to 5 minutes.
Yes, Josh Kunkel, 2417 East Admiral Boulevard, Tulsa. So we're here today to talk about our, basically we have existing parking spaces that are 2/3 in the public right-of-way and then 1/3 on my client's property. So we are merely trying to formalize what exists currently, what is the current condition. The other thing is that we're adding 2 ADA compliant spaces with appropriate curb ramp that leads to the building to where we'll have a lift in the building, which is actually a shorter path of travel than what was currently provided. I will say that the Cane's Coffee building is currently under redevelopment, under reconstruction. I would be happy to answer any questions that you have.
All right, thank you, sir. Anybody else wanted to speak on item 5C? Staff?
All right, you got our comments before you. As ordinarily, this is in a location where we wouldn't necessarily recommend the use of 90-degree angle parking. However, this is kind of an unusual location as much as the Northwest 12th Street is basically terminates at the BNSF railroad tracks and is not likely to ever be extended. The only caveat to this might be at some point in time if the property to the south of the Cane's building should develop, the commission may have to look at like a parking restriction along the south side of the road just for maneuvering purposes. As Mr. Kunkel had mentioned, a portion of the spaces is in the public right-of-way and a portion is out, and therefore in the summary of staff recommendations, the staff's got a recommendation that a motion for approval should include requirement that the applicant dedicate public right-of-way or roadway easement sufficient to fully cover the proposed setback parking areas and the required adjacent sidewalks. So action on this item will be at the discretion of the commission. I'm here to answer any questions that you might have on the application.
Do we have a motion concerning item 5C?
Mr. Chair, I move the application be approved with the staff's recommendation.
Okay, we have a motion to approve item 5C from Commissioner Schuline to include staff recommendation of the right-of-way. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second by Commissioner Varnell. Do we have any discussion on it? All We have a motion to approve item 5C to include staff recommendation about the dedicated right-of-way from Commissioner Schuline, seconded by Commissioner Varnell. Can I have your votes, please? Okay, item is approved. We go on now to item 5D, Brian Fitzsimmons, AIA President, Fitzsimmons Architect, to consider request to, one, establish 2-hour time-limited parking on the east side of North Dewey Avenue from Northwest 11th Street to approximately 226 feet north of the north curb line of Northwest 11th Street. 2, establish a reserved parking space for the physically disabled on the east side of North Dewey Avenue from approximately 190 feet north to 226 feet north of the north curb line of Northwest 11th Street. And 3, establish 2-hour time-limited parking on the north side of Northwest 11th Street from North Dewey Avenue to approximately 279 feet east of the east curb line of North Dewey Avenue. Hi, sir. Can I have your name, address? You have up to 5 minutes.
Okay. Brian Fitzsimmons, 719 North, or that's my home address, 2721 North Walker, Fitzsimmons Architects. This is putting parallel parking on the north side of 11th Street as part of a larger development that is being built on that corner, approximately at 30,000 square foot. It's under construction now. It does have a parking lot behind it, and the Midtown and downtown area in general, parking along the street is kind of necessary. We need as many as we can get, and it also provides a safety barrier for people on the sidewalks and that sort of thing. So it adds to the walkability and the vitality of downtown. The parking area along 11th, we propose to make it match all parallel parking that is adjacent to the streetcar. I have photographs of various examples if you want that or you're not familiar with, but there's an abundance of parallel parking along the streetcar route all over downtown. And then along Dewey would just be as many as we can get there, working with and also providing an accessible space. Originally, we didn't know that we had to have one there because there is an accessible space on the northeast corner of this block. Apparently, since that was created, that area was vacated, and so it switched from being right-of-way to private. So, any questions?
Very good, thank you. Anybody else wanted to speak on item 5D? Yes, sir, please. Can I have your name, address, and you have up to 5 minutes.
Good afternoon to the commission. Name is Jesse Rush. Address is 406 Southwest 7th Street, Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, 73109. I'm the streetcar operations manager for Oklahoma City Streetcar. Wanted to start off by saying OKC Streetcar is looking forward to servicing this development. We have a streetcar stop along Dewey. It's approximately maybe 800 feet from this development. I am speaking out in opposition of the parallel parking stalls located on the north side of 11th Street. So a little background of our experience with parallel parking stalls. Beginning back in January, we started tracking all blockages along the streetcar route. On average, a blockage lasts anywhere from 2 to 4 minutes. And in January, we were averaging about 150 blockages per month, all the way up into April. In April, we installed some of those enhanced parking stall labels. You had it in your handout there. It says, park behind the white line or be towed. We saw our blockages go from 150 down to 50 blockages per month. Still blockages. And so our experience with parallel parking stalls is that anytime you install parallel parking stalls, you're going to see blockages, right? So that's one issue that we have with the parking stalls. Another issue that we have is anytime you have one lane of travel, like we do here, where we have one lane of travel westbound, if a streetcar is blocked by a car over the line, what we've seen in our experience is that a lot of times cars will get frustrated and they will attempt to go around the streetcar. In this scenario, if they attempted to do that, they would go around the streetcar into oncoming traffic, all right? And then in my handouts there, one kind of interesting scenario here at this intersection is basically like the star layout. So you've got potentially 5 different streets that could feed onto 11th Street, feeding eastbound traffic. And then the very last handout that I've got, the very last picture there, is an incident that happened on July 4th of this year. So the streetcar was waiting westbound to make that left-hand turn onto Dewey. We actually have a protected signal there. Essentially, streetcar pulls up, checks into a loop, that entire intersection turns red, and we get a streetcar-specific signal, allowing the streetcar to make that protective movement. An automobile got frustrated waiting on us to make that turn and actually went around us into oncoming traffic, and as the streetcar was going through that intersection, the automobile hit the streetcar, and it was a hit-and-run incident. The automobile hit the streetcar and then drove off. So we see adding the parallel parking stalls, there's potential to adding additional safety concerns for Oklahoma City streetcar and also possibly other automobiles. Thank you. Any questions?
All right, thank you.
Thanks.
Okay. Ma'am, if I could have your name, address, you have up to 5 minutes, and make sure to fill out one of our forms, please, when you're done.
Jane Jenkins, 220 Northwest 19th Street, here to represent the Midtown Association, which supports the request of the applicant for parallel parking. We have now quite a high concentration of businesses in that area, and parking has really come at a premium. Some of the parking is private and restricted to certain businesses, so the more public parking that we can install, the better. I had a meeting last week with Eric Winger, the Public Works Director, and Jason Fairbrush with COTPA, or Embark. And while, Public Works, this meets all of their requirements for that, we certainly understand the concerns of the streetcar. However, we know that as the streetcar gets more and more commonplace in downtown Oklahoma City, people are going to behave more and more in accordance with the streetcar. The fact that this parking on 11th Street will have to be constructed during the hours that the streetcar is not in operation and will require special permits because of the electricity, the wires that are up there, is going to be putting in this parking at a greater cost to the applicant. But they're willing to do it because they think it's necessary. And we're coming up on a time, according to Jason with Embark, that we're going to be able to measure space by space where the blockages are with the streetcar. And in my conversation with the applicant, there comes a time where this is really causing a problem on the streetcar on these 3 spaces or 4 spaces or whatever, that these spaces are a problem. They are willing to come back to this commission and take these spaces out. But they'd like an opportunity to try these spaces. Again, it's expensive to construct them, but parking really is at a premium in this area. If you've been to Midtown on a weekend night, you know that, and it's really it doesn't sound like much, but it's really necessary. And I do believe that the examples my colleague Jesse gave about people going around the streetcar is related to impatience of traffic and not necessarily people trying to park. And I do understand. From my office, I get to see Robinson, and I get to see the streetcar have to stop on occasion, but I've also, kind of like the statistics show, see that people are getting better and better about heeding the warning about parking within the lines. Thank you.
All right, anybody else wanted to speak on item 5D? All right, staff.
All right, you've got our comments before you. What you're looking at is an application to build basically a parallel parking lay-by on Dewey Avenue, one space of which is proposed to be reserved for the physically disabled. Similarly, you're looking at the addition of about 6 spaces along the north curb line of Northwest 11th Street. So action on the item is going to be at the discretion of the Commission. However, staff will note that if recommended for approval, a motion should include the following items, and that is the applicant bearing all responsibility for preparing the construction documents for all the public improvements, which consist of the parking and the sidewalk areas, and it also be responsible for dedicating public right-of-way or roadway easement sufficiently to of sufficient width to fully cover the proposed public parking laybys and the adjacent sidewalks. And this is, and the reason, and a little bit of background on why that dedication is necessary is because the city needs to maintain, or be in a position to maintain ADA accessible routes, and so and in order to be able to post like regulatory signs, we need to have sidewalk of sufficient width to be able to post signs and still allow pedestrians and those in mobility devices to be able to get around. I'm happy to answer any of the questions you might have.
Can I add to the dedication part? That document and the dedication of the easement for that has already been completed, and all of the engineering drawings have been completed and virtually approved with the exception of this decision today.
Right, and you're okay with the funding also?
Yes.
Those 2 points.
And I can attest, as the applicant, she was speaking on behalf of the owner. He did relate to me the idea that if these particular spaces do become indeed problematic, removing them, they're more than happy to do.
Okay. All right. So do we have a motion concerning item 5D?
Mr. Chairman, I move the application be approved as presented with the staff's recommendation.
Okay, we have a motion from Commissioner Schuline to approve item 5D to include the 2 staff recommendations. Do we have a second?
I second.
Okay, we have a second by Commissioner Milner. Any discussion? Just a second. Yes, sir, go ahead.
Brian, did I hear you mention the development has a parking garage or parking space?
There's a parking lot behind it that's accessed from the alley.
And how many spaces will be in that?
It's about 100, sorry, I don't have it memorized. I want to say 120.
Okay. And this is what, a mixed-use development or what?
Yeah, it's going to be on the ground. It's 2 stories. On the lower level, retail and small commercial with an emphasis on small shops. And then on the upper level is all office use.
Reason why I ask, and it's not necessarily motivating how I may decide on this, but the purpose of the streetcar is to get people to use the streetcar and not have to park right in front of places. And I understand there's a stop on this corner for the streetcar?
Stop is around the corner.
Around the corner?
Yeah.
I just wanted to make that comment.
All right, thank you. And sir, did you want to come up and say something real quick?
If the commission is looking to approve the parallel spots, and obviously I haven't been out there to look at the space and stuff, but so the current requirements for a parallel parking stall is 8 foot wide, 20 foot deep, or long, however you want to measure it. So where we've seen parallel parking stalls that are that measurement, that's where we've seen most of our holdups, right? But on Sheridan, east of Oklahoma, there's a strip of parallel parking stalls that are actually 10 foot deep and 20 foot long. If it would be possible, could we see about recommending that the parallel stalls be that 10 foot deep to give an automobile that extra depth, to be able to park in the stall, but give them a little more leeway in the parking stall? I don't know if that's possible.
I was about to say you could probably discuss it with the applicant because, you know, the city's standards for parallel parking spaces are minimum.
Sure.
So to design a stall that was 10 feet wide as opposed to 8 feet or something like that, provided the site constraints would allow something like that, I think something can be negotiated.
Site restraints, sidewalk, and the property line is actually quite close. So we've made it as wide as possible. It might be 8.5 feet, but I don't have that in front of me. But I know they are 22 feet long to give extra maneuverability rather than the minimum 20. So.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Come explain to us the process on what happens when the streetcar gets stuck.
Absolutely. So the current process is a streetcar will pull up to an area where a car is over the line, right? So if a car is over the line, the operator stops, and they will radio OCC, which is the Operations Control Center, back at our storage and maintenance facility. At that time, a supervisor will be dispatched to the area, and then we also immediately call OCPD. And so typically what happens is the supervisor will get there. Shortly after that, OCPD officer will arrive. If the streetcar can be flagged past the obstruction, that's what we'll do. And But if a vehicle is so far over the line that the streetcar cannot continue, OCPD will make a call to the local record company. They'll come out and they'll tow the vehicle. What usually happens, that process usually takes 15 to 20 minutes. What usually happens, though, is the streetcar operator is sitting there honking the horn. All these strobe lights start showing up. Officers start showing up. Somebody might look out the window and realize, oh yeah, maybe that was my car. And so they'll run out and move their car. That's why it's usually, the blockage only lasts 2 to 4 minutes, typically. We do actually have some legislation trying to move forward to make it where Oklahoma City Streetcar could actually call for the tow, trying to eliminate some of that time. It's in the process, and that could take several months.
Okay, all right. Yes, sir.
You mentioned earlier you had 140 blockages and it was down to 50 or something. What was that? What were the timelines for that?
Yeah, so we started tracking that. We started tracking it as soon as we started operation. We started really digging in deep starting January 1st. And from January till I think it was April 26th, let me back up. So basically from January to March, we were seeing about 150 blockages per month. Our main blockage area was on Robinson and Hudson near the Myriad Gardens. In March, we worked it out with Public Works to come out and do a pilot program of installing the enhanced pavement markers with the extra verbiage that was in your handout there. So we did that on Hudson next to the Myriad Gardens, and we did that on Robinson, the full length from 10th to Sheridan. And as soon as we did that, we saw the blockages drop, right? So we knew that we had the potential for something positive here to help mitigate that issue. So coming up in April, we did the entire alignment, preparing for the Memorial Marathon being into town. We knew that we'd have a lot of people from out of town. We want to try to make it as easy as possible for everybody. So we did the entire alignment April 26th, and then basically from May on, it went from 150 blockages down to 50 blockages per month on average.
Okay. Sir, did you have a question?
I just had a comment. Parking is just so valuable in this area, in the Midtown area, and I just look at it. We have an applicant that's willing to completely fund it and allow some more parking down there. But I just wanted to say I appreciate Commissioner Littlefield's comments about the overall goal of the streetcar to alleviate people from parking down there. But I think that could be 5 years off. And so it could be a time where we come back and realize, hey, we don't need these parallel parking spots anymore, and we're going to use them for something else, or maybe there'll be a great project for one of the parklets downtown OKC does or something. And they're also willing to say, if it doesn't work, we'll shut these parking spots down. But I also agree, if you're down there at any time on a Friday with the patrons down there, just parking is really valuable, and I think it's worth a shot to let them go in, and then if they have a problem, they'll remove them, or they'll deal with it at a later date.
Okay. Any other comments on item 5D? We have a motion from Commissioner Schuline to approve item 5D to include the 2 staff recommendations, seconded by Commissioner Milner. Votes, please. Okay. Item is approved. We go on now to item 5E, Stephen Stefanik, Superintendent Principal, Hardin Charter Preparatory High School, to consider requests for a westbound left turn restriction effective from 7:30 a.m. to 8:30 a.m. and from 2:30 p.m. to 3:30 p.m. school days only on Northeast 101st Street at North Kelly Avenue. Sir, if I could have your name, address, you have up to 5 minutes.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. My name is Stephen Stefanik, 1301 North Kelly Avenue. And just give you a little perspective on the issue we're having. Harding Charter Prep High School was affected by Pathway to Greatness from the Oklahoma City Public School District. We rent from Oklahoma City Public Schools, and we were previously at the Harding building located at Chartel Avenue. With the initiative, we were excited about Oklahoma City's change, and we made the move and took over the previous Centennial High School at 1301 North Kelly Avenue. If you might not be aware, charter schools receive no transportation funds in the state allocation of money, which means that we have to rely on our families to take our students to school. We do not have school buses. The facility at Northeast 101st Street was built for school buses. It was built to have about 7 school buses leave the property and about 30 cars leaving the property with staff members. And now with our location being there, we're looking at a time at about 300 to 400 cars trying to leave one exit, one entrance in a time, and it's leaving where families aren't able to get out of the property for about 45 to an hour long in just a mile stretch. So the request is just to have a right turn only at certain times, or it was rephrased a different way. So, if any questions, I'd be glad to answer.
All right, thank you very much, sir. Anybody else wanted to speak on item 5E? Staff?
All right, the request before you is not unusual for a lot of schools that have got like a single primary ingress-egress point. In this particular case, it happens to be a public street as opposed to a driveway. The only other users are there's a pair of radio, TV, broadcast towers. Basically, they're unmanned facilities at the far east end of Northeast 101st Street. We did notice that the city does have plans for future widening that would include marking 101st Street as having a dedicated left turn lane, but at this point in time, that's still a ways out. So at this point, so the requested control by the principal is appropriate for this particular area. It'll facilitate moving the parents and caregivers getting their students in and out of the school in an orderly manner. So action will be at the discretion of the commission.
Okay, do we have a motion for item 5E?
I would recommend approval of the request, sir.
We have a motion from Commissioner Miller to approve item 5E. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second by Commissioner Varnell. Do we have any talk on item 5E? Okay, we have a motion to approve item 5E from Commissioner Miller, seconded by Commissioner Varnell. Can I have your votes, please? Okay, item is approved. We go on now to item 5F, Jody Finn, Principal, Higher Plain Christian Academy. We have staff input on this.
Okay, on Friday we'd received an email from administration from Higher Plain Christian Academy, and they've requested their item to be withdrawn. So staff would request that there be a motion made to strike the item from the agenda.
Okay, do we have a motion concerning item 5F?
Motion to strike the item.
Motion to strike from Commissioner Varnell. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Miller. Any discussion about this item? Okay, motion to strike item 5F from the agenda from Commissioner Varnell, seconded by Commissioner Miller. Votes, please. Okay, item is removed. We all now go to item 6, comments from citizens. Sir, if I could have your name, address, and you have up to 5 minutes.
Thank you, Commissioners. My name is Jack Dake. I live at 2116 Cadwell Avenue in the Kingswood Addition in South Oklahoma City. I've been a South Oklahoma City resident for my life. I'm here because I have learned that there is currently, of the many things under consideration, I think it's called Alternative Speed Control Project, something regarding speed bumps, speed humps, and rumble strips. I live in the Kingswood Addition, which is what I call a terminal addition. When you come into the addition, you can go nowhere else. You can go north or south, but you're only going to go to homes there. I've spoken with several of my neighbors since learning about this. Right now, I'd say it's about 15 people. I found 2 people for it. Everyone else is against it. Everyone on my street is against it. And I can evidence, in fact, we talked about getting written evidence to traffic management and to y'all that we're against the idea. Casey Cook owns Keller Williams Real Estate, which is one of the largest real estate groups here in South Oklahoma City. He lives in our addition, longtime friend of mine. He tells me, which is something that's common sense tells you, putting in speed bumps, speed humps, or rumble strips, and from now on I'm just going to call all of that just speed bumps. It will devalue the neighborhood, and it will reduce the potential buyers for homes in the neighborhood. Since I've learned about this here about 2 weeks ago, I've spent a lot of time, every time I drive in and out, 4 to 10 times a day. On the average, hardly ever less than 4, hardly ever more than 10. 90% of the time, and this will be at all hours, day and night, sometimes I have to leave in the middle of the night, but there's no cars moving in this neighborhood. There is no human being visible. They're all in their homes. So speed bumps would, for 90% of the time, it's an intermittent problem that exists in the neighborhood. We do have a speed problem in the neighborhood. I have experience working in Norman. Norman has put in humps and bumps and strips. It's a disaster. All people do is try to find an alternative route. And some of their speed bumps are like, they're destructive to your vehicle. You can't go over them anyway. I can't imagine who designed those. And then what happened is, of course, as the traffic went around, then they had to chase the traffic with more speed bumps and speed humps. In my addition, that's not possible. My addition, you come in, you go left or right, you have no choice. So you don't have a way to avoid them. So everyone is going to be driving over them. Rumble strips are no different. I understand that contemplated in this project is something called a canvas area, that before anything like this would be done to a neighborhood, someone, I presume city employees, in order to have a quality canvas to know that the data is accurate, the city would actually send out people to canvas a canvas area. That's concerning. The canvas area itself, what is it going to be? 300 feet from the proposed installation? Well, that won't work. I mean, my addition just to go to the south is over half of a mile. And everyone that lives on the south side of the addition, it's about 2/3 of it, maybe a little more, would be affected by a speed bump on the south side. Yet people, if there's a limitation in distance instead of by the people affected, then you have a small amount of people deciding for a whole bunch of people. That's not a good plan at all. So if there is going to be progress made in this project, the canvas area has to be carefully considered to include everyone that would be affected by it physically. Now, there's also the concept of being affected by it financially. So if it's, and I've got some comments coming on that here. The totality of the people affected must be considered in some type of design of a canvassing program. Secondly, the density of the canvas. That is, if you go to knock on 100 doors or 80 doors, you know how hard it is to get people to even come to the door. So is the percentage, whatever that's going to be, I assume it would be at least 2/3 in favor of speed bumps. If you only get 25 or 40% of the people to come to the door, then it can't be 2/3 of the people who respond to the door. Let's see, also any kind of canvas area or potential neighborhood would have to be based on some standard that differentiates a neighborhood that has through traffic versus one that is terminal traffic. And so a terminal traffic neighborhood like ours should have a very high standard to meet, because you're dealing with the residents of the neighborhood, not people just jetting through there. And so that would be another concern. The problem that's happened, I'm one of the people, not excessive, but it's 25 miles an hour speed limit. Sometimes I do 35. But I've slowed that down since I've learned that I have a couple or three, that's all I've been able to find, but a couple or three neighbors. It's like, we have a wonderful homeowner association. It's a wonderful place to live. It's an incredible addition. You're not going to find another one like it in Oklahoma City because of the wide boulevards, wide streets, big lots, good setbacks. It's beautiful. Greatest green belt probably in any addition. So I've slowed it down. If I see anybody, I'm 25, I won't even do 25 there and stuff. But it's really a responsibility in this type of situation for us as neighbors to communicate with each other. So if there's going to be a potential program like this, part of the step is, what have the neighbors done prior to proceeding to communicate with each other and get their fellow neighbors to be considerate? So that would need to be a step in any process, in my opinion, is you have to evidence that you've given written, maybe even hand delivery of letters, but also certainly written through the mail notification to your neighbors that there's a problem, we're looking at dealing with it this way.
And sir, if I could ask you to summarize, please.
Okay.
Time's up.
Let's see here. Let me see what I can skip. What's the process for removal? Once this is done, you find out that it's a mistake. Then how's their removal process? If it takes 2/3 to put it in, should it have to take 2/3 to get it out? There, if you could, in other words, there has to be some way to get it out. That's always hard to do. In the notice that would be given once if this plan is put into place and it becomes a real deal here in Oklahoma City, part of the notice process to each person in the addition should include that it could adversely affect their property value or the number of potential buyers. And I guess my time's expired.
Yes, sir. So let me just ask.
Yes, sir.
Do you think this is going in your neighborhood? Is that why you're concerned right now?
We've got a couple people that have informed us that they've communicated with the city. They're trying to bring this about, stick these in our neighborhood, and it's like, wait a minute, I think we need, we're not happy with that idea.
No, that's fine. So, okay, just to come back to some of your points, you're exactly right. Those are the issues over the 12 years that we've been thinking about common speed in neighborhoods. Those are all the things that we've looked at, and then we had no solutions. So what we've come up with are some possible solutions, not that they're the best, not that they will fit everywhere, just some solutions that, as you said, that the majority would want, considering all the implications, and you went over all them. And one of your key points was through neighborhoods compared to internal neighborhoods. And that was always our first point to ask is, what are you guys doing in your neighborhood to control? What are you talking about in your neighborhood newsletter? What are you doing to say, let's take care of each other, compared to throughput neighborhoods where we have no control over them? So all those points were really talked about. What I would ask if you could put all your notes into a thought and then send it to the staff. We can just put it, and so that way when we do look at these things, we can make sure that those items are actually looked at.
Okay. The reason I came today is exactly what you're saying. I've got about, I don't know, since 1982, I've appeared for I haven't appeared for you guys, but I've been just for about every other commissioner board. And I found that once a staff report gets written, that pony's out of the corral and it's on its way.
See, and I think we're still at the front end of it. We're still looking at some as a whole bunch of options. So your inputs are very valid, and we need to think about those things as we proceed on. So
okay, I'll reduce that to writing and turn it into traffic management.
Yes,
correct?
please.
Okay, we'll make that happen.
Your comments to Ms. Coyne, who's sitting at the front, off to your left.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you
for your
very
time,
much.
sir. Anybody else wanted to speak? Comments? Okay. We'll go on now to item 7, reports and others from traffic commissioners, et cetera. Go to Commissioner Varnell.
I have no additional comments at this time.
Thank you. Commissioner Littlefield.
One word, zero.
And over to Commissioner Russell.
Nothing.
Okay. And Commissioner Schuline.
Nothing, thank you, sir.
Okay. And Commissioner Miller.
I have one comment. We had our Neighbors Night Out was last Tuesday citywide. I'm sure some of you probably attended yours as I did ours. And we always, we either have the fire truck or the policeman come by. And this time it was a policeman. And a very nice gentleman came by and we got to talking. And evidently he had patrolled the Hefner Parkway stretch that we raised the speed limit west of the Parkway West from 40 to 45. And it was so that struck up a conversation with me, obviously, and he wanted to know why. And I said, well, I think the speed study showed 85% of the traffic, the 85th percentile was about 45, 46. He said, you're right. 85 or 6% of the people are exceeding 40. He said, I wrote 200 tickets. I said, well, that's why we raised it. We took those lawbreakers and made them law-abiding. And he really, he really didn't, he was really serious, and he was really soaking this up. So my question or my comment is, do our officers, do they know what we do up here, and when we set a speed limit, what all's involved? Or are they just strictly involved in looking at the sign and deciding, am I going to pick this guy up or not? I asked him if he thought we had any speed traps in the city. He said, well, maybe there's one up here on a curb. I've got it set 20, 30 miles an hour. And he said, I can sit there all day and write tickets for that. And I said, well, we might have to put is it a black and white? And he said, yeah, it's a black and white. And I said, maybe we ought to put a yellow and black and just let people wonder. So, maybe I'd advise them to go 30. Well, I don't know. Anyway, it was very interesting, and I'm just curious how much the officers, if they ever, when y'all get them together or when they meet, or how much in the academy, are they exposed to anything about how speed zones are set and what the warrants are for some of the different traffic control devices?
You know what, that's a really good question. And, having been on the department for 20 years and having had the opportunity for the last 3 months to sit here, I know Stuart's been very, very helpful to kind of clear up stuff for my office in special events. But most of us that have been in patrol or investigations don't know what y'all do. And this has been awesome just for developmental purposes to be able to go back and talk to people about this. And I can get with the training center and ask them what they're putting out to our new guys. I appreciate what they do on a daily basis. But this is just, like for me, it was nice to learn that, oh, wow, we actually do use science and, and decisions aren't always just, arbitrary. And I think giving that feedback to the officers would help them. And so you bring up a really good point, and I'll be happy to
that
pass
officer,
that on to...
He didn't know there was a commission. He didn't know there was a traffic commission.
Okay, go to Commissioner Miller.
I've talked a lot today, I'm sorry, but I just want to say, Commissioner Miller, my neighborhood also had Neighbors Night Out, and I know that's a busy night for the police officers, but thank you guys for going out. It means a tremendous amount to the neighborhoods and the fire department and our city officials that go out. But I just want to make the comment, that's what it's about, Neighbors Night. Even if it's to learn that we have a traffic commission, and we're out there and we're engaging, and that's such the point of it, and we all learn from it. So again, thank you to the police officers that went out that night.
Okay. Sir, do you have anything else?
No, sir. Thank you.
Good. Counselor? All right. Thanks for your help today. Staff?
Nothing to add except for that we've got our standard monthly report on yield signs and parking controls administratively installed.
Okay. And the only thing I have is to talk to the traffic commissioners that next meeting we're going to vote for the chairman and the vice chair. So if you'd like to be considered for that, please let Stuart know. Okay. Is there any other business for the traffic commission? All right. Stand adjourned.